Welcome back to the Discover Project. Last episode we followed along as the team removed the rub rail and all the internal hardware from the Discoverer. In this episode we'll continue with the demolition process by filling holes in the transom and removing the subfloor fuel tanks. Get ready for the fiberglass to fly as we get down to the dirty work on the Discover Project. In Chapter 1, we removed the motor and transmission from the Discoverer. Now it's time to address this 6-inch wide exhaust port in the rear transom. For this tricky task, we turn to the most senior member of the FishingNosara Build Team, Captain Jack Weinmann. Jack has 20 years experience as an ASC master mechanic and has several boat builds under his belt, including the Wanderer, Explorer, and Adventurer. As with all fiberglass repairs, 90% of the work is in the preparation, and the devil is certainly in the details. Jack uses an air-powered body saw to cut away the old fiberglass tube that ran from the exhaust manifold to the transom. With that out of the way, Jack switches to a die grinder and begins to remove excess material from around the hole. He also adds a 45-degree faired lip so that the forthcoming wooden plug will have a good secure spot. Now this all looks pretty easy standing outside the boat with a camera, but let's see what Jack was dealing with inside the boat. I'm pretty sure he's down there somewhere. Yep, there he is. Remember that at this point in time, we still haven't cleaned out the bilge, so Jack's lying in about 1.5 inches of greasy black water as he contorts himself to get access to this hole. Jack wants to achieve uniform smoothness with this cutout, and the best way to tell with fiberglass is to give it the old hand test. You can feel rough spots better than you can see them when it comes to old fiberglass. Satisfied with the inside hole, Jack moves outside and repeats the process. At long last, the prep work is done and it's time to fill this hole. Jack and Charlie start by making a wooden plug out of marine plywood to fit the hole. Then they fair the area around it to accept fiberglass matting. They run a coat of resin to hold the plug in place, then add circular pieces of fiberglass matting one at a time to build up the low spot to match the depth of the transom. To finish this repair, Charlie adds fiberglass micro balloons to a batch of resin, creating this fiberglass paste. Once everything cures and dries, this area should be bulletproof. We repeat the process with the rest of the holes in the transom, and after a few days' work, you could say that we have a brand new butt on this boat. Captain Jack and his trusty angle grinder are at it again. This time, he's cutting an access hole into the fuel tank so we can see just how much 30-year-old diesel fuel we're going to have to dispose of. The existing tanks are made out of 3/4 inch thick fiberglass, which means Jack has to be very careful not to throw a spark while grinding this piece out. This old fuel pickup is just one of the pieces we'll have to replicate on our new aluminum tanks. As for this old one, we got a perfect place for it. We called our good friends over at Independent Waste Oil, and they showed up with a pump out trunk to dispose of the 200+ gallons of old diesel fuel. Here's a handy tip. Once the tanks are about half empty, Jack raises the front of the boat about 30 degrees. This forces all the sludge and solid matter to the back of the tank where the scooper hose can get it. As soon as the waste oil truck was on its way, Jack went about the very difficult task of cutting out the fiberglass fuel tanks. Jack faced many difficult obstacles in removing these fuel tanks. First off, the 3/4 inch thick fiberglass doesn't take well to cutting tools, so Jack had to run a scoring line the entire length of the tank, slightly deepening it as he went. Also, the relatively low flash point of diesel vapor meant that a heavy-duty tool like a Sawzall would be unsafe in this situation. Lastly, these fuel tanks extend several feet forward of the shelves, meaning that a clean snatch and jerk from the top is out of the question. After completing his cut with the die grinder, Jack uses this pry bar to pull the top off the fuel tank. Jack discovered some stubborn foam underneath the shelving that was holding the fuel tank in place. He pulled all his flexible tricks to get under there and remove this troublesome piece of material. With the foam out of his way, Jack continues his cut around the lid of the fuel tank and prepares to remove the top for real this time. It's tempting to feel victorious at this moment, like you've accomplished something, but then you turn around and realize that this is only one of 2 fuel tanks and the entire process has to be repeated on the other side. That, and this is just the lid. Underneath reveals the next set of obstacles. If this tank's going to be cut into pieces small enough to fit out through the holes, then these baffles have to go. Let's take a look at Jack and Craig working on the starboard side baffles. That wasn't so hard, was it? If you're looking to catch up with Captain Jack and the rest of the FishingNosara Build Team, you know where to find us. Covered in fiberglass resin, knee-deep in diesel fuel, and working hard on the Discoverer project.